right, here we are, last show before the Oscars. And we got some Oscar stuff-ish this week on DVDs. We have got television.
Yeah.
We have got documentaries. We have got classic movies. We have got foreign. We got a lot of stuff to get through today. But I think our Oscar prognostication is going to be really interesting this year because I'll tell you, I still have no idea what's going to win. I think it is totally up in the air. The new Academy class, the new membership, those thousands of new members that they admitted have totally mixed the thing up. They've changed the dynamic of being able to sort of figure out where the taste goes. I still think Green Book's going to win it. I don't think Green Book deserves to win it, but that seems to be the least hated film, and that's the one that's been winning lately.
It's an odd world that we live in where Green Book and Black Panther are both being considered. Although it's not all that odd because, again, we lived in this world before about 1989 when Driving Miss Daisy and Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, among several other films actually were in that mix. But nevertheless, those two were in the mix, and the dynamic just there is almost the same.
Yeah.
It's quite bizarre.
It is indeed.
Quite bizarre.
Anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I would normally have thought that Star is Born, which we will talk about today, would be the odds-on favorite, but it hasn't been for some reason. And, my wife is not a big Star is Born fan because she thought that Bradley Cooper was basically doing a really irritating Jeff Bridges impersonation, which I disagree with, but that's,
It's funny to me. I thought he was trying to put himself more in line with Sam Elliott's.
I agree with that
character, because particularly as I don't want to ruin the film for anybody, but for God's sakes, go see the movies, people. It's out on DVD, but that made sense as a choice for me in juxtaposition to what we come to know how he feels about Sam Elliott.
Yeah,
that he.
You think Sam Elliott's going to win best supporting actor?
Yeah, Yeah,
it's the sentimental favorite.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that don't always get it.
It doesn't always get it. The thing is, Mahershala Ali has been winning all the awards.
Yeah.
But he's already got one. Yeah. And he is really good, but he should be nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah, because
he's the star of the damn movie.
Yeah, he's the one in the backseat.
Yeah,
he's the other guy's the chauffeur.
It's his story. He's Don Shirley, so it's a little bit insulting that the lead actor is winning the supporting actor awards. But if you are talking about a genuine, honest to God, real supporting actor performance, Sam's, but even still, I'd give it to him just because he married Catherine Ross. Damn it,
stayed married for 50 years now.
50 years.
It's I'm irritated about that category because Michael B. Jordan was nominated, and I felt like that was the best, legit, straight up supporting performance
to this day. I mean, even though that film got a Best Picture nomination, the comic book that got that nomination that everybody wanted Dark Knight to get back in the day before they went to 10 nominees or up to 10. Still to this day, Heath Ledger, only person ever nominated for performance in a comic book movie.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I thought that Michael B. would be viable is because of
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, because I felt like the Academy.
If you walk into a comic movie and you elevate certainly the villain in that case to something other than a comic book villain, if you're other than Thanos, I want to take over the universe.
Wrapped in CGI.
If there's some, kind of moral nuance to it, which there was with Heath Ledger, and there also is with Michael B. Jordan. There's some real and interesting nuance there. But no, I guess not. Anyway, our gripes are there. So let's see where to start. I'm gonna. We ended on anime last week, and there are a few anime titles that didn't get to. I'd like to get to. So I'm gonna hit a few of these this week. Princess Tutu from Sentai and Section 23. This is so beautiful, and this really is quite a wonderful discovery. It's completely off the radar from what you normally get in anime. It's absolutely beautiful and wonderful and kind of poetic, and it doesn't have, it's not about spaceships and monsters or fantasy worlds or, rivalrous, goofy teenagers and schoolgirls and none of that stuff. Politics in high schools, it's none of that. It's it's like a fairy tale. It's like a ballet. It's like a light opera. It is really really lovely. It's called Princess Tutu, the complete collection, and it's about a writer who leaves his characters behind when he dies. And what does that mean? Well, that means that in a Pinocchio kind of a sense, the characters now need to find something to do. They need to sort of well, you'll have to watch it. It's worth checking out. It really is worth checking out. Princess Tutu, beautifully animated, and it really is. It's poetic. It's wonderful and it's beautiful, and it's totally unlike anything I've ever seen. We got 3 here from G-Kids, who is the go-to place for interesting animation these days. G-Kids releases a lot of anime, but they also release a lot of international animation. They've been getting Oscar nominations. You know, they're a really good operation, and they are releasing their own stuff now on DVD and Blu-ray. These are all DVD and Blu-ray combos. The first one is Lu Over the Wall, Lu, which is from the great director Masaki Yuasa. Very, very nicely. It has there's a real interesting look to this. This includes an interview and audio commentary with Yuasa. And there's just a really interesting kind of a throwback anime style to this. Everything more recently has been in the modern anime vein, which is to make it look more CG-ish, more three-dimensional, more textured, more real, more photorealistic. And what Yuasa is going for here is really throwback. Go back right to that Astro Boy look. We're going to talk about that in a second, too. Go to that Astro Boy look and just go very minimalistic and very, very colorful and very primary colors. And it's a wonderful little fable about a mermaid who joins a rock band, a teen rock band, and helps them become famous. That's basically all it is. But it's done with such a sweet fable-like innocence. It's really, really great. Also, with the similar look, is another Yuasa film, The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. This is about this is a very, very uniquely Japanese comedy. It is also very, very minimalistic. All takes place in one night in the city of Kyoto, where a group of teenagers go out and have a bit of an after hours kind of adventure overnight in the city of Kyoto. I'm not sure that this translates beyond Japanese culture, but it is extremely well animated, and Yuasa is absolutely wonderful. And there is also an interview with Yuasa here. And then there is Fireworks, which was in the running for our LAFCA award. And Fireworks is really, really gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's from the same people that did Your Name, which did win our award and was absolutely superb. And this is a genre film about about some teenage politics that go into an interesting supernatural direction. Let's just say that. Teen relationships that go supernatural. I know that could apply to like 100 different other. How else would I describe this without giving away what it's really about? Gosh darn it! I don't even know how to not give you spoilers. Anyway, let's just say there's a MacGuffin that they find in the ocean, and it has remarkable powers, and it takes them on an adventure. I don't know if I can even. There you go. That's as far as I can go. Anyway, Fireworks is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's definitely worth checking out. So there's that. And then the last few here, we have the complete series of Astro Boy.
I love me some
Tezuka's Astro Boy. This is 16 hours of really, really fantastic animation, but this is not the original Astro Boy.
No, not the black and white.
No, this is the 2003 Astro Boy, which was an attempt to sort of reboot the character, and it's really, really good. I like the original black and white raw Astro Boy because it's where anime begins. It's the embryo that creates the whole genre. But seeing Astro Boy transposed from that into this is really nice too. It's
I enjoyed that series.
Yeah, it was really, really good. So that's from Mill Creek, and it's 16 fantastic hours of the rebooted, reconceived Astro Boy. And then the last two here, one is a double feature of Memories and Metropolis. Metropolis from Osamu Tezuka and Memories from Katsuhiro Otomo. And they're both perfectly great. Metropolis obviously is the legendary film. It's the one that everyone remembers.
Yeah.
Memories is a little bit more under the radar, but this is from Mill Creek, and they had both titles, and they make for a really interesting double feature. It's worth checking out, and it's only on DVD, not on Blu-ray. If you already have Metropolis on Blu-ray, this is probably a rental just to get Memories, but otherwise it's a worthwhile release. And then the last one here is Red versus Blue, which is not exactly anime, but it kind of falls in with it. Red versus Blue, the Shisno paradox. This is, of course, spun off from the Halo game. The Red versus Blue thing has been a thing for a while. It's all very photorealistic, all very gamer oriented. If you're not into Halo, you probably won't like it, but it's really, really well done and very intense.
Fun.
All right. TV.
I got a couple of them that happens to be animation here. So, Family Guy, a couple of special editions from the Family Guy people. Season 16, uncensored episodes of Family Guy. This is what are you going to do? 20 episodes, all in a 3-disc set, big laughs, completely uncensored, deleted scenes from some of the more interesting directors who did some work on Family Guy. So some really, really, really funny stuff here. If you are into the Family Guy business, this is some good stuff. Also, if you happen to like the big musical pieces that they do on Family Guy, this is Family Guy 20 Greatest Hits, which are 20 episodes of the ones that have the most interesting sort of musical performances.
Too bad Mark's not here, because I would throw these at his head.
Yeah,
he loves that show.
He loves that Family Guy. You look. I think The Simpsons just went into their, I want to say
31st season.
I was going to say 131st season, but 31st season. Longest running animation, longest running anything, primetime series, period.
The Simpsons has run for more than half my life.
Yep.
That's weird.
I remember when I was in graduate school when the Fox Network went on the air. About 1985, and The Simpsons were a part of the Tracy Ullman show. Matt Groening's with a little thing in the Tracy Ullman show, which is a really good show, by the way.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the Fox Network, Fox being the first network, the fourth network, but the first network since the DuPont network had went away in the 1960s.
Yeah.
ABC, CBS, NBC, and then in about 1985, Fox. The Tracy Ullman show, Matt Groening and The Simpsons inside that show, and here we are 34 years later.
Just mad. It's crazy.
Everything
it's
else
really
is gone,
crazy.
But that's still around. I do think Family Guy, if it keeps going the way it's going, 16th season here, it might catch them someday. Eventually, all those Simpson people are going to have to die.
It's nuts.
They can't live forever.
South Park may well.
South Park will be. It is interesting that it seems to be animation. Back in the Flintstones had a really long run.
Flintstones was like 5 or 6 years. It didn't run longer than that. Yeah,
but I suppose live action. We had Bonanza.
It was Gunsmoke ran the longest of all the scripted primetime shows until The Simpsons.
And then MASH had a nice long run too, but I think Gunsmoke was like 25 years or something like that.
24, 25, 26 might have been, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. We have a number of films from the miniseries masterpieces. Really great stuff that were on television stuff, mostly from the 80s and 90s. You have the Titanic. This particular one with Peter Gallagher and George C. Scott and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Eva Marie Saint and Tim Curry and Mary Lou Henner. You can just from the names of the folks who were in the series, you can pretty much place yourself in the period when this came out. But it's just another sort of example of the whole sort of Titanic movie. Interesting stuff. There you have Moby Dick played with Patrick Stewart at the helm of this, doing that sort of big Jean-Luc Picard kind of thing. Ted Levine also in the film. Neat little adaptation of Moby Dick. Scarlett, not Gone with the Wind, but Scarlett, right? Which is a sort of adaptation of the ideas in Gone with the Wind. here with Timothy Dalton and what was her name? She was married to Joan Whaley Kilmer.
Oh yeah.
I met her when she was Joan Whaley before she married Val Kilmer. I told her that was a mistake, but she did it anyway. So Scarlett there kind of told from that point of view. The Odyssey with Armand Assante.
Yeah.
So these are really kind of neat. Armand Assante, Isabella Rossellini, Greta Sacchi. In this particular adaptation,
as cheesy as it was, I kind of didn't mind it.
Oh, Konchalovsky directed this.
I know.
Konchalovsky directed it. Not bad at all.
Yeah,
not bad at all. And Cleopatra, Leonora Varelia, I can't pronounce her last name, playing the beautiful Cleopatra. Also Timothy Dalton in this adaptation. Mark Anthony played by Billy Zane. Hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I know.
But these neat miniseries, sort of talking about these historical dramas, kind of fun. Actually, I enjoyed just about every one of those back in the day when they
made them like that. At least when networks did. Now that stuff's all off network now.
Yeah, I go back to the days of Masada, Master of the Game. I mean,
Shogun,
Shogun, North South. Real old school miniseries.
Roots kind of started it, and then they went to Shogun and Centennial. Remember that?
Centennial
was a big thing. Yep. The Thornbirds. I cried my eyes out at the Thornbirds.
Oh,
it was so much fun. Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
It was a great era.
A little bit of British television here. Bang, sort of interesting series set in sort of blue-collar community of Wales. A young woman and her brother lose their father. 12 years goes by. She sort of sorts herself out, becomes a cop. And pulls it together. He's been doing all kinds of petty criminal stuff over all this time. Eventually, he comes across a gun, and his crimes become a little bit more daring. Look, this is neat. I cannot believe that this has not already been adapted to an American television program, because it really seems like it's exactly the kind of thing that would be adapted to an American television program. And won 5 BAFTA awards too. So it's a pretty neat series, and I rather enjoyed it. And then we have got Ackley Bridge.
That is a great show. I'll take up from that one. That's a really, really interesting show about the collision of white and Pakistani students in a public high school. And it's that's a really, really interesting show because it gets into a particular dynamic that is I guess broadly in terms of the class and the culture and the race issues, you could broadly apply that to just about any culture, any society. There's an equivalent. There's an analog somewhere. But in this one in particular, it's just the casting. The kids are so good, and the writing is so sharp. Really, really, really super sharp. In post-Brexit England, a lot of these issues are coming to the fore for the rest of the world. Things that England has been kind of, Britain has been dealing with for decades now, and so this is very much kind of letting it all hang out. But I think the actors are just great. The kids, the families, the parents. It's a really, really terrific show. It's really, really getting good. This is 12 episodes on 3 discs from Acorn TV. Really sharp. Ackley Bridge, Series 2. Very cool.
I am so happy to be able to talk about Doctor Who, the complete 11th series, because it stars a woman.
Yeah,
and I got to tell you, I watched all of this. I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and there was all kinds of back and forth about the whole fact that Doctor Who
previously said ages ago, I have been female.
Yes.
It's not like this came out of the blue. No. You should have been ready for this. Just be ready.
Yes.
All that matters is they have a good actor playing Doctor Who.
Frankly, Doctor Who is going to have to make a few more interesting transitions over the.
Yeah.
You know what? The only thing I don't want Doctor Who to ever not be British. I only want Doctor Who to ever be British. He can be brown and British, female and British, but British. That Doctor Who must always be British. James Bond too, for that matter. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed the 11th complete series. I love the cast, the very interesting cast that they put together here. I love the guy that plays the grandfather in the series, and his black grandson because he's married to his grandmother. It's just a lot of fun to me, and plus I really love the adventures. The adventures were absolutely fantastic. I know exactly which doctors she's channeling.
Yeah.
And one of them is my favorite doctor, Tom Baker.
I that's interesting. You mentioned that. It hadn't occurred to me, but I would agree.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting to me about Doctor Who now, and to some degree you can say this about The Simpsons as well, is that these shows have now reached a point where the people who are writing for them grew up on them.
Yeah.
So there's institutional knowledge. You are writing, you're not imitating the ones that inspired you, but you sort of know the universe, you know the world. It's very clear that the writers on Doctor Who, these are people who know everything there is to know about Doctor Who. You're not going to stump them. You're not going to go, there was an episode in 1958 when the John Pertwee and the Daleks. Yeah, I know that one. I've seen it. I know it. I know. We referenced that in season, 37, episode 19, when we made the callback to, and you go, oh man, you guys know this inside out. Yeah. Like if you're a Doctor Who nerd, these writers they've got it all over you.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are too.
They are too.
They absolutely are too. Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker, the first female Doctor Who.
Yeah,
loved her in Broadchurch too. Jodie, she was great.
She's great. I love her. She's just terrific. She was. That's perfect casting. I mean, really, they could not have picked a better Doctor Who. She's one of the best in years.
Yeah. American Vandal season 1. This was an interesting sort of satirical. I guess you'd call it a sort of satirical crime drama, right? Yeah. So in this high school, in this community in Oceanside, California, somebody the community is scandalized because somebody goes through and draws phallic symbols on several vehicles, 30, 40 vehicles, big phallic symbols. There's this one kid in the school that everybody knows is a prankster and a bit of an asshole and the kind of guy who would do that.
Yeah.
So everybody just decides he did it. His name's Dylan Maxwell or something, I don't know, and they expel him from school. The thing of it is, he says, "No, I didn't do it. I didn't do it." And he says, if you really knew me, you'd know that of all the things you've ever accused me of doing, I've never said I didn't do them before.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I start today? I did everything else you've ever accused me of doing. I did all that. I didn't do this, but they expel him anyway.
Yeah.
And its best friend decides, you know what? I believe him. I don't think he did it. And this is all about that sort of satirical investigation. It's actually quite funny and very sharp. And it's saying something about society and the way we put people in little frames and in context. And when we decide we know who they are, and we're not really paying attention at all to who they are. So it's kind of interesting in that way. Man, I love this. I love this. I love this. The Betty White collection, First Lady of Television, 40 episodes featuring Betty White in 2 very, very early television series that she did when she was very young in her career, when she really established herself as among the first ladies of television and comedy. In television comedy, and has held on to that position for the past close to 60 years now. Life with Elizabeth, 26 episodes, which starred and was co-produced by Betty White in the 60s.
Yeah.
Right? That's how far you got to go back to that. And a primetime series, Date with an Angel, 16 episodes, which really launched her into sort of like the public eye. Betty White was stupid fine. Let me just lay that right out there. Just stupid fine.
Yep.
And yet still chose to be a comedian rather than go the, I don't know, what, your beautiful diva sort of route.
Yeah.
Which I think was an interesting choice.
It's the Shelley Winters trajectory.
It's the Shelley Winters
trajectory. It's what Shelley Winters did. She just turned 97.
Yeah.
God love you, Betty.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
And it's still funny.
Yeah.
Still funny. My favorite Betty White, the work of Betty White, though, nevertheless, is the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yeah, for sure.
That Betty White on that show, Bird Dog and Lou Grant.
Yeah.
that was just wonderful for me.
Yeah.
Golden Girls and all of that. But think about those characters. The character that she was playing on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, who was sharp and a little bit mean and a little bit caustic and a little horny, and then the character that she played on Golden Girls, the sort of ditzy one who didn't quite always know what was going on. That is the range of Betty White. And I can't tell you, I really, really, really love everything about her, and I love this series. The First Lady of Television, Betty White, the Betty White collection, 40 episodes, fantastic.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Betty's, I want her to do, her hosting on SNL was just priceless, and they obviously accommodated her when she did that a few years ago, and enabled her to sit down for most of the show and save her energy. But boy, was she funny.
What did you say? 96?
97. Just turned 97.
Keep rolling, Betty. Keep rolling, Betty.
Keep it up.
The 10th Kingdom. I have here a series from about I think this came out in about 2000. You got Diane Wiest.
They've released this a bunch of times, but it's popular.
It's a very popular series. You know, it's set in this fantastic. There are 10 kings beyond the mortal world. There are 9 kingdoms, and all this kind of wacky stuff is going on in this game. It was a lot of fun. And this one includes bonus features, including the making of the 10th Kingdom. I remember this series from when it was on. When it first came out, young Kimberly Williams, who played the bride in all those Father of the Bride movies with Steve Martin, is in this series, and Rutger Hauer, and just everybody. It's a whole lot of fun. The 10th Kingdom. And then 5 People You Meet in Heaven, which comes from the people who created the Tuesdays with the Morrie series. Yeah, these are precious and kind of sweet, and I appreciate them. This one came out in about 2004, 2005. John Voight and Ellen Burstyn and Jeff Daniels, and it's touching and it's sweet and it's very comforting and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you can't really go wrong with the stuff. I wish they would have put some special features on this, but not a whole lot.
All right. Here we go. New movies. And right at the top of it, Star is Born, 4K, Ultra HD. The film that I originally thought was going to be the Best Picture odds-on favorite because everyone loved it when they saw it. They loved it at Toronto. It got crazy rave reviews. Everybody loves Bradley Cooper, on and on and on and on. Directorial debut. They love that, right? Kevin Costner and Mel Gibson and, you know, all those directing debuts from actors. They always, when they bring a passion project to the screen, they were, you know, back in the 90s, they were winning Academy Awards left and right.
Yeah.
And I thought, here we go again. That's what this is going to be. Hasn't quite panned out that way. Some people simply don't quite respond to the film. Which I find to be a little bit odd, but my wife is one of them.
The 4th incarnation of the film?
It's the 4th. The original is the Janet Gaynor from the 1930s, in which he was an actor, she was an actor. And then in the 1950s, about every 20 years they had been doing these. And then in the 50s, you had the Judy Garland with James Mason, in which they made her a singer. And that's the one that tends to be everyone's favorite.
Well,
I have it on good authority.
I'm a sucker for the next one you're going to
mention. And then they made them both singers in the Streisand-Christopherson film. And this pays homage to all the previous. It's definitely emulating the story of the Streisand-Christopherson film.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it's got a little there's a little riff of Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the very beginning, so it's saying we love you, Judy. There are Janet Gaynor references in here as well, so he's clearly tipping his hat to the previous films. Here's my take on this. First of all, I think it's Sean Penn went ballistic over this film. He loves this. He authored a big old letter in Deadline saying this deserves to win Best Picture. Please give it, you know, Best Picture.
Yeah, I wish he hadn't done that because that might have been the problem.
It could have been the backlash.
Yeah.
But I love this film. It's my second favorite film of the year after The Favorite, and I think Cooper does a hell of a job taking something that is familiar to us. This film looks like it was shot. I mean, you know, Matthew Libatique's cinematography too. It looks like it was shot in the 70s. It has that feel to it. And he does something that I thought would otherwise have been impossible. He takes something that is so familiar. We know this story, okay? We know this story inside out. The Artist, which won Best Picture, is even this story. It's you know, it's a familiar story. We know the beats of this story.
The one coming up and the one going
down. We've seen it so many times. We know where it's going. We know everything about it. There are no surprises here. So why am I watching this? Here's why you're watching it. You're watching it because there are 3 or 4 emotional beats in here that are so pure and so true that even if you know they're coming, if the actor can pull it off, if the director can stage it right, if everybody is on the same page and they all hit their beats, you're going to sit there just awash in tears. You're just going to say that's a pure moment, and I can't believe how just beautiful and human it is. Every single one of those beats, Bradley Cooper nails it.
Yeah.
He absolutely straight up nails it. And the rest of the thing might as well coast. But it doesn't. It's really we talked about Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott is amazing in this thing. I mean, you've seen the commercials where he's blubbering, where he says, "You could demand I've been holding your ass all these years," and it's Sam Elliott going deep, man, and you want to cry. You're like, that's the Sam Elliott I wanted to see for 50 years.
Well, you know what it is. Bradley is leaning into the melodrama.
He is.
He and of course, you know, when Lady Gaga at one end of it, who is she is melodrama.
This was supposed to be a Beyonce film originally. Yeah. And Beyonce dropped out because I think she was pregnant, right?
Yeah.
That was what it was. She got pregnant, and then it was a whole thing. This was originally going to be Bradley Cooper and Beyonce. God love you, Beyonce, but you know what?
Never would have got there.
It wouldn't have worked as well.
Never would have.
And here's the reason why. The reason, and I know you're fond of the Streisand film. The reason I'm not so fond of the Streisand film is because
Streisand.
It's because of Streisand.
She's standing there being Barbara Streisand the whole freaking movie.
That's it. She's just standing there. I'm never like, I at no point do I go, a star is. You're already a star. You're Barbara Streisand. Why are you pretending to be anything else? I never believe that she's anything other than Streisand.
Yeah.
Beyonce would have had the same problem. Yeah, it would have been the same problem. It would have turned into The Bodyguard, where Whitney is Whitney Houston through that whole movie. Yeah, Whitney Houston is not playing a character.
That works in The Bodyguard because because she's already a star when we meet her, so her Whitney Houston.
That's it.
It works in the context of
Beyonce would have done the same thing. She's Beyonce. There's no way that Beyonce can convince you that she is not Beyonce. Yeah, she cannot. It doesn't work. But Gaga, because she is such a chameleon, because we've seen her in so many costumes and so many outfits, and because she never looks the same twice. You know, she's one of those people. She can chameleon into anything. The second you see her, you're like, oh, that poor average girl.
Yeah. She's not classically beautiful. She's a perfectly lovely girl. Yeah. But she's not classically beautiful, so you're not overwhelmed by that. It's not Grace, Grace Kelly,
right?
Or you're like, like that. No, you look at her; she's perfectly lovely, but she looks like any chick that might be in any neighborhood. Sexy though. Very. And then emotions on the sleeve.
And vulnerable, and so vulnerable. And then the other thing I love about this is he takes all of these stand-up comics that we've more or less forgotten about, or if we haven't forgotten about them, we never thought that they could do, drama, and he puts them into the most interesting roles. Dice Clay, who's been doing pretty well as an actor, he was in the Woody Allen film, and he's done stuff. But playing Gaga's dad is wonderful. It's a wonderful piece of casting. Yeah. Dave Chappelle shows up and has not a comic scene, a human scene. Yeah. He sits there and he shares some of the wisdom of life. He's settled down. He left the business behind. And you just go, is Dave Chappelle making me cry? Yeah. What the hell? Where did that come from? Yeah. The one, though, Eddie Griffin, they chopped him out. Yeah. You notice that? Yeah. He's the preacher. He's in it for like 3 frames. Whatever he was doing in that preacher scene didn't fit. It didn't fit. Yeah. So they left him out. But it's
because they wasn't cutting for time.
No. But I love this film. I really do. And it is just gorgeous on 4K. Libatique cinematography could not be more enjoyable. And there are tons of extras here. I mean, music videos. There's a featurette on the making of the film that's just wonderful. And songs and performances that were cut out of the film as well. So you get more than your share of music. It is a wonderful, wonderful movie. I love it. And I love some of the stuff they did in terms of directing. And you'll find out here, like the giant concert scene where she has her big breakthrough. How did they get all those people to show up for a concert? Fascinating story. Yeah. They talk about it on here. Yeah. And then we've also got on Blu-ray and DVD, Backtrace. You probably didn't hear about this. It's got Sylvester Stallone and Matthew Modine. Normally, that would have been a reason alone for this thing to get some notoriety. Matthew Modine needs to dye his hair. This white hair thing that he's got going, I thought it was just for Stranger Things. Apparently not. That's the color of his hair now. It's creepy in Stranger Things, and it's suitable. It's a little too creepy here. This is a Grindstone thing. We talked about last week about the kid vid that Grindstone pumps out through Lionsgate Premiere. This is one of the action things that they do. This is all, just macho stuff, and it doesn't really make any sense. Matthew Modine is a guy who he's a bank robber. Things went wrong. He winds up, with amnesia and is shoved into this psychiatric ward. And years later, there's a prison break thing that happens, and Sylvester Stallone is, the detective who's, got to work with Christopher McDonald, who's still around for some bizarre reason. And anyway, it's all, they got to recover the money, and there's a whole, none of it makes sense. It's narratively completely disjointed, and it's really just a reason to watch these stars if you like them. Kind of a standard Grindstone thing. And then the last new movie this week is another 4K. I don't quite know how I feel about this. This is a J.J. Abrams programmer, 4K Ultra HD Overlord. This is, the war genre mashup. We've got a lot of these. They're usually like Nazi zombie movies. There are a lot of those, the Troma releases and stuff. This is one of those done with kind of an A-list an A-list production value.
Yeah,
and
still didn't work.
It doesn't really work. I mean, it bridges over probably more to something like Captain America, where you have that whole super soldier thing with the Red Skull and all that. That's kind of what's going on here a little bit too. So, but it doesn't really work. And none of these movies never really work. The only one of these that ever kind of worked for me worked because it was almost too artsy to ridicule, which was Michael Mann's The Keep in the 80s. Remember that?
Yeah.
You know, it's Nazis in a mountain keep and then like some giant zombie character. I never really understood where that guy with the red eyes, what he was or where he came from. But it didn't matter. The whole thing was so slow and it had Tangerine Dream music, and I kind of felt like I better take this seriously because it's taking itself seriously. This doesn't take itself seriously.
No.
But there's a lot of extras here if you like this kind of stuff, some featurettes, behind the scenes stuff, and you know, it is what it is. But otherwise, J.J. Abrams produced Overlord, came and went, looks good, but it's not really my thing.
Let's see what I got over here. A bunch of docs. You got
let's hit some docs. There's some good docs there.
I thoroughly loved Tea with Dames.
I love this. I don't even care. All I needed was just get these great British actresses together, sit them down, give them some tea, and let them talk.
And which is exactly what this.
That's all I needed.
What this is. For one thing,
that's all I needed.
I do not know why I had not sort of sussed out the fact that all of these women would know each other. You know, and of course they do. We're talking about Dame Ellen Atkins, Dame Judi Dench, Dame Joan Plowright, and Dame Maggie Smith. That's who we're talking about here. And one of them is a lady and a dame. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Joan Plowright. And what they're basically doing is that they're at this beautiful, beautiful country house, and they're sitting around having tea inside and out, and talking about their long and fascinating careers, including some of the intimate details of their actual personal lives. Of course, Dame Plowright was married to Laurence Olivier for a great many years.
And there's some funny talking about that because
they
all worked with Olivier.
Yeah.
Right? So they all have these funny conversations. Well, you were married to him, and when he directed me, and you know, and such. And they all have such wonderful stories about all, and it all has great clips of the stage work,
and then
and TV,
and even some personal footage. There's footage in this doc of Joan Plowright at age 16, participating in some sort of little outdoor play pageant thing. And there she is, and she's just there for a moment, but you can see her face, and you can see that it's her face. You're like, she's 16 years old. This is just a wonderful document here. One of the things I love about this movie is that they talk about what it meant to not be traditionally beautiful in the context of their younger careers, and how that actually helped them in their careers.
Yeah.
Particularly Joan Plowright talks about that. None of the directors, none of the powerful directors or producers, they were not the object of sexual, so they were actually able to work because they weren't traditionally beautiful.
Yeah.
And they could do I thought to myself, that's so interesting. We think about that the exact opposite here in Hollywood.
What's also really, really sweet in this is that, Joan Plowright has failing eyesight.
Yeah.
And they are all so accommodating of her and so loving of her. And, it's great that these women who've known each other since they were young women and young girls, and they've grown old together, and they still relate to each other like young girls, but they also recognize that they are older. And there's a familiarity and a kindness. It's just it's a delightful thing to sit through, just to be a fly on the wall.
You know what?
Really is.
It gets really salty with the language.
It does.
These old ladies cuss. They have some cussers there are. I just love that.
The British stage world that they came up through was a man's world.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we've talked about this before. That was the world of Bates and Olivier and Burton and, O'Toole and these hard-drinking, hard-living men. And if you were going to be a successful woman in that world, you had to be tough. But there's no other way to put it. These old broads are tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And love them for it.
Yeah, nobody ran over them. Interesting stuff. Really, really dug it. Studio 54, the documentary, filmed by Matt Triner. This is a really good sort of deep dive documentary about Studio 54.
It sure is.
And that whole little period. Not that long of a period, about 1977 to about 1980.
I know.
My dad took me to Studio 54 in 1978.
Yeah.
78, 79, 78, 70. My dad took me to New York in 1978, and we just did New York. And he took me to Studio 54. My dad did all kinds of totally inappropriate things. Played at CBGB's, though. He got me a gig at CBGB's. Way to go, Dad. This is really just a very, very interesting documentary about this cultural time capsule of a place that captured a moment. It's a fascinating place. Of course, if you grew up when you and I were growing up, Wade, on the cover of all of the magazines, we would see who's the little girl, Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
I think she was 10, 12 years old,
something like that,
bumping around Studio 54. It's an interesting little document. This does not exist today. Whatever
couldn't exist today.
Nutty places are out there.
Couldn't do it.
You're not Studio 54.
No.
You're feigning and faking, and that's all you are. Couldn't do it today. Studio 54.
Got some PBS titles here, and the first one is just such a delight. It is from the American Masters line, the American Masters series, which has been going on now for decades, and they still haven't released the Charlie Chaplin or the Buster Keaton American Masters, which are multi-part and amazing. Get those out there. I don't know what the rights issues are, but get those out there. Anyway, this one is Sammy Davis Jr. I've Gotta Be Me. I so love Sammy Davis Jr. It's just unbelievable. I love all the Rat Pack guys, but I got to be honest with you. Sinatra, even though he was the king of that crowd, not my favorite voice of all of them. Sammy is my favorite voice. Yeah. Dino, number 2. Yeah. Those are the two that I absolutely love. But honestly, as a singer, none of them could match Sammy.
Sammy had more energy.
He had energy, he had power, he had range, and he was little.
And he could do it all while he was dancing.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's such an unbelievable talent. If you don't know the story of Sammy Davis Jr., you do not know one of the great American entertainment success stories of all time. It is an epic story where he came from and where he went. And it is so fascinating to find out all of these nuances. He defied stereotypes. Every stereotype that you can think of. Sammy Davis Jr. just said, I'm going to rock that, man. I'm going to bust that wide open. And he did, and he just blew right through it. And it's such an amazing life. And they have some great interviews here. Jerry Lewis, Whoopi Goldberg, Billy Crystal, people who loved him, who worked with him, who knew him. His funeral is part of the special features, which is really, really super touching. It'll bring a tear to your eye. But yeah, you have to know where Sammy Davis Jr. Came from to really appreciate just the magnitude of his accomplishments and what he meant for American music at a really crucial point in time. When you consider what he meant to both black and white audiences of the civil rights era.
Very complicated story. Really very complicated relationship with the black and white communities. We just got here. We had just got here when the film Tap.
Yeah,
which is Sammy's last film, Gregory Hines' film, was coming out, and I did the junket for Tap. So I got to meet Sammy Davis Jr., who of course lived in Beverly Hills anyway. I used to drive past his house all the time. There, and then he passed away, and all of that sort of went down. Frank was still around.
Yeah.
Sammy's longtime wife at that time, it might have been his third wife, but nevertheless, they had been married about 25 years at that point. Issues with Sammy's taxes in the house, and it looked like she might lose the house in Beverly Hills. Frank came in, paid off the taxes on the house, paid off the house, made sure she got the deed. And so that's how real that was, and that's how real that relationship was.
It's super real, and Jan Murray was part of that group as well, and Jan Murray's grandson is a very, very good friend of mine, and we always talk about Big Pop, is what they call Jan, and there are a lot of great stories that come down through the family as well about Sammy and that whole group, and there's no bad in any of them, man. He's just his appearance on All in the Family is one of my favorite all-time bits of TV. It's in TV history.
Actually, everybody says it was Kirk and Uhura.
Yeah.
No. First interracial kiss on television was between Sammy Davis Jr. And actually, it was between Sammy Davis Jr. and these boots are made for walking. Nancy Sinatra.
Nancy Sinatra, yeah.
But my favorite one is between him and Archie Bunker.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my favorite.
For sure.
One.
It's such a great moment in TV history. Sammy Davis Jr. being on All in the Family. It's just so fantastic. The Swamp, Nature Never Surrenders. No, this is not a Trump thing. This is an American experience documentary about swamps. And specifically the Everglades, which is something that if you don't live in Florida, you don't really fully understand what it means to the state ecologically, economically, and every other area. The Everglades is just a unique thing in the United States, and this really gets into the politics of it, the economics of it, the ecology of it. It's really very interesting, and it's very complicated. Ann Curry's wonderful "We'll Meet Again," which is all about specific incidents and events, and people who are brought together through these momentous episodes in history. It's so touching, and it's so smart, and it's good journalism. And I love Ann Curry, and I'm just glad she's doing things like this. Some of the most touching stuff here: Heroes of 9/11, The Lost Children of Vietnam, and Rescued from Mount St. Helens, which is just that is just such an amazing story. We've also got Letters from Baghdad.
Which love Gertrude.
Gertrude Bell. This came out around the same time as the Nicole Kidman Gertrude Bell movie that was directed by Werner Herzog, based on the life of Gertrude Bell in a dramatic sense. Not a good movie, I'm sorry to say. Gertrude Bell basically is often called the female Lawrence of Arabia. She intersected with Lawrence. If you saw the Herzog film, you know that. She intersected with Lawrence at certain episodes in their respective careers and involvements during World War I in the Middle East. But Gertrude Bell is equally as fascinating, if not more fascinating, than Lawrence. She dealt with, he was a military genius. She was a political genius.
Yeah.
And frankly, we can attribute a lot of the mess in the Middle East today to what Gertrude Bell did at the time.
Literally drawing lines.
Yeah.
But maps, creating countries that didn't exist.
But frankly, that's sort of the fault of everybody that inherited it from her. She didn't create the mess. She just sort of created the situation that we failed to fix. What she did at the time really helped bring the war to an end, bring victory to the Allies. Really just an astonishing life, where she came from, how she fell in love with the Middle East. I mean, it's just a beautiful documentary. It really is.
And an extraordinary adventurer, obviously.
Tilda Swinton doing the voice.
An extraordinary adventurer, obviously. Her writing, absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
and
amazing.
An amazing photographer.
It's phenomenal, right?
She's all of these things.
I know.
Any one of these things would be extraordinary. Yeah. She was extraordinary at all of them, and then was effectively an ambassador, a politician of sorts, too. And by the way, think about this a second. This is Gertrude Bell, this woman, this English woman, engaging Arab men from the beginning of the last century. Who didn't even talk to women.
Including their own wives.
But Gertrude was engaging them on the highest possible political levels. It's very, very fascinating.
And Tilda Swinton, perfect for the voice.
Yeah.
It puts you right into who she was. It's really good.
I thoroughly enjoyed that doc. After Auschwitz, this is a very interesting film. And in the way it is constructed, what it does is it picks up with four women, two women who were liberated from Auschwitz, and it follows them for the next several decades of what happens to them after liberation. Generally speaking, when you watch something about Auschwitz or one of the camps, when you get up to liberation, the Allies come in, they liberate, and that's in, and we see all these skinny people walking around, but we don't really talk about what happens next to these people. They had no home in Europe anymore. And they had to figure out a way how to make a way for themselves wherever they could possibly go. Very often they ended up in Israel. Some of them obviously immigrated to the United States. But their lives were very difficult. Just think about, we talk today about post-traumatic stress, the post-traumatic stress of our soldiers. Think about the post-traumatic stress of having been in Auschwitz but survived.
This is a thing that I often raise, because I am, my mother was a war refugee, so I grew up with all those stories, and you you very quickly become acclimated to the idea that we like to put a happy ending onto a lot of things that don't really have a happy ending. One of which is, yay, that murderer was brought to justice. Well, yeah, but now the family of that murderer has to figure out how they pick up the pieces and move on.
Yeah.
Now, when a war is over and people are liberated, but they still have to live their lives, and now their lives have changed. I mean, all of these things are sometimes it's a more interesting consideration what comes after the resolution.
Yeah,
and that's what I like about that film. It's
all
really
of
good.
all of that loss, not just of not only did they lose all their stuff, all of that family. Sometimes lost right before you. On the heels of that. Then let's talk about Cohen Media Group's presentation of Spiral.
Yeah,
which is about how over the last 2 or 3 decades there has been an actual rise in anti-Semitism, mostly in Europe, very specifically in France. And not just the sort of talk anti-Semitism, which is what it started with about 3 decades ago. In about 2 decades, over the last 2 decades, it's been about physical attacks against Jews and synagogues.
It never really went away.
I mean, look, we can trace this all the way back to the Dreyfus Affair, if you want to do that,
True.
Or and before, for that matter, but certainly to the Dreyfus Affair, and how that has, with the rise of some sort of right-wing fanaticals. I suppose we can pin some of this on, if not Marie Le Pen, certainly her father.
Yeah.
Opening up a chasm for these people to flow through,
exploiting a lot of the simmering, the festering. Look, I mean, the history of Europe is deeply problematic in terms of lingering anti-Semitism. It goes back centuries. It's deeply ingrained in the culture, and it never really went away.
Yeah,
and Germany was the country that acted on it. But, the great nasty secret in so many other countries is that when they went into Poland, they were happy to give up their Jews. They went into France, they were happy to give up their Jews. And that's there were only a handful of countries that mostly the Scandinavian countries that pushed back and said, nope, we're not gonna play that game.
Yeah.
So Europe has to really still wrestle with a lot of that, and I don't know if they've reconciled themselves.
No, not even close. And ironically, of the European countries that has dealt with it, Germany is the one that's dealt with it the best. As opposed to France. France has dealt with it the least, which is an interesting thing. Moving on to something lighter, Antonio Lopez, 1970. Sex, Fashion, and Disco. Antonio Lopez was an extraordinary fashion illustrator in the late 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
He was just I was a fashion kid back then, and always sort of like going through the pages of Elle and Vogue, because I've just always been that guy. And most of the illustrations that I was looking at during that period, 1970, 74, 75, were illustrations done by Antonio Lopez, who was just an absolutely dazzling New York-raised Puerto Rican, raised in the Bronx. He was an absolute arbiter of style and fashion back in the day. He is credited with discovering Grace Jones, Jessica Lange, Jerry Hall. He hung around with Karl Lagerfeld and Yves Saint Laurent. And when you see some of the archival footage in here of the illustrations he did, you're going to know them right away. You're going to know them immediately. Because they influence fashion and style right to this very day. So this is a very interesting person. And, it's very interesting that sometimes there are people who are behind the scenes of these sort of major cultural shifts. We don't know who they are.
Yeah.
This is one of those guys. There's probably something that you wear that you love that Antonio Lopez convinced you was really cool.
Fantastic. 3 interesting docs here. One is Far From the Tree. Far From the Tree, it looks at the idea of what constitutes a normal family, and it focuses on several different families who all have a situation where the parents are wrestling with how to, with the fact that they have a child who is different, who fell, quote unquote, far from the tree, who presents certain challenges, and they're all different. One of them, the child committed a horrible crime. In others, they have physical afflictions, Down syndrome, autism, dwarfism, right? And it's a little disjointed in the fact that there isn't much that holds these families together. But at the same time, that's also the power of the film. So if you can kind of get over the fact that it's very episodic in that way, and that there's no sort of binding theme other than the fact that these are all families looking for some path to find a way to be normal in a world that says that you're not, then there's a lot of value in this. It's very, very human, very touching.
Sweet.
We've also got the Sunday sessions, which is very timely, actually. The publicist who presented this to us just let me know a few days ago that this is back in the news again. This is actually a really interesting documentary that looks at the world of conversion therapy, which is now illegal in 13 states. Sexual orientation conversion therapy, and to the credit of the filmmakers, they just wanted to be a fly on the wall. This is people who desperately want this to reconcile their sexuality to their religious beliefs in many cases. They weren't going to be judgmental. They were just going to enter this world and point the cameras and let you see and experience what this is actually all about, as opposed to editorializing it and arguing about it in some kind of a context. And the filmmakers have a point of view, but they feel like it's more powerful to present this without the editorializing, which is a very Maisleys thing to do. That's what the Maisleys really pioneered.
The brothers, yeah.
And boy, it is really powerful, and it's worth watching and discussing and debating. It really is, because it raises issues that are not easily answered. And what's significant here is that the figures involved in this film have since filed a lawsuit in Florida to overturn certain local laws, I believe, there that have banned conversion therapy. So they are filing lawsuits. They're very litigious about trying to make sure that conversion therapy, whatever the medical establishment says about it, their position is that this is a right, and that some people want this for themselves and have a right to seek this therapy out if they want it. It's going to be a very interesting legal landscape for the foreseeable future as to where that goes. But if you want to discuss the subject in any kind of an intelligent way, you need to see this, because this takes you right inside it, and it shows you exactly what goes on and what this therapy consists of. And I can't imagine that any two people are going to see this in the same way. But it's really bold filmmaking.
Narrative film that we thought we would have been talking about this, in the past Oscar season. Boy Erased, Lucas Hedges,
yes,
Russell Crowe, Nicole Kidman. That subject.
This is better. Yeah. It is. And then Gary Winogrand. Oh, my gosh, what a wonderful documentary this is. Gary Winogrand is one of the great street photographers of the latter half of the 20th century. Amazing figure. And his photographs are just magnificent. They define primarily New York. I mean, they are part of the history of New York, the modern history of New York. But here's the other interesting thing. And I'll tell you nothing else about this doc other than this. Gary Winogrand's career takes a very interesting change when he comes out to the West Coast. And his photographs change. And a lot of people used to say, it's sloppy, and he was just getting old and lazy, and he came out to L.A. and so forth. No, there's a reason why his photography changes. And they do there's some amazing forensic detective work that they do to figure that out. And so help me, you are going to do just like I did. And in that moment where the reveal is, you're going to start crying, and you're just going to bawl, and you're going to have this appreciation for him and his eye and his photographs that you never had before. Gary Winogrand, amazing figure. Gary Winogrand, All Things Are Photographed. Beautiful documentary.
Wow. Got a few over here. Let's see. I think I'll do the new ones first.
Okay.
New ones, so to speak. If the 25th anniversary edition, Hugh Grant, Andy McDowell, and the Mike Newell film For Weddings and a Funeral, which still plays, by the way. It runs on television about every 25 seconds on one of the movie networks that I constantly have playing in my house. I'll look up, I'll see Hugh Grant with that floppy hair and that sheep. And it's just really, really, really. This was just a wonderful movie from a period in time when the British were just cranking these things out left and right, Small films, all of them, all human stories about friends and family.
Yep.
About
a boy.
Oh, about a boy, the Full
Yeah.
Monty.
Yeah.
I mean, there were dozens of them there for a while, and they were really, really wonderful. This is one of them. This one is a brand new 4K scan full of all kinds of special features. So you get the movie, but you also get everything that you can think of. A couple of different featurettes, deleted scenes, promotional spots, and materials. 25th anniversary of 4 Weddings and a Funeral. What the heck, man?
I love it.
Where the hell did the time go?
I know.
4K Ultra HD set of Predator 4-movie collection. Here, you get Predator, Predator 2, Predators, and The Predator.
But no Alien versus Predator.
No Alien versus
None
Predator.
of the Alien versus Predators.
That little mashup there was kind of. Hey, look, that first Predator movie. Went to see that movie when it came out with the wife.
Yeah.
And we just thought it was just the coolest thing we had. For one thing,
Still great.
it's still the movie still plays. I love the way it was set down there in the South Central America, wherever it was set. I love the construct Bill Duke and Carl Weathers and
Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura, and
I ain't got time to bleed.
it's just that was just that was just a period and it was a time and that movie absolutely worked.
I like Predator too.
Set right here
Danny
in Los
Glover
Angeles.
in the subway and the whole. I love.
Ruben Blades, it worked for me.
Yeah.
Gary Busey, running through the movie. Did the junket for that one too.
Yeah.
But by that time, I was here.
Yeah.
And I think I did the junket for the next 2 of these as well. Anyway,
I even liked the third film.
Predators.
I even liked Predators. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff in that one. The only one I don't like is the Predator.
The Predator, yeah.
Which I thought was a mess. But
and they've done 2 more since then? Add the Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, they've only done those. But the Predator just came out, in December or whatever it was. But I mean, look, if you want to be a completist outside of the Alien, the AVP universe, that's a nice 4K box set. It really is. And it's probably more Predator than any one person should ever consume in a sitting, but hey, why not?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now to some. This one is from the Warner Brothers Archive. Did you have those Warner Brothers?
I got the Warner Archive.
Let me give you that one too. Then, since you got the Warner Archive stuff, I'll let you knock that.
Yeah. Well, actually, let me do the Kino stuff first.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up.
Then I'll give you that one too, because that's one of your Kinos.
Thank you. The first of the Kinos here is they're all studio classics except for this one. This is a Kino Classics. This is from the F.W. Murnau collection, The Haunted Castle and the Finances of the Grand Duke. Not absolutely top tier Murnau, but it's it is
early Murnau's before the other ones.
Yeah, this is useful because you are learning where Murnau came from. You're familiarizing yourself with his style, with the evolution of his craft. So from a film historian standpoint, these are worth checking out. 1921, The Haunted Castle. 1924, The Finances of the Grand Duke. It's pretty, it's pretty evolutionary Murnau stuff, but it has the expressionist style. It's the Weimar thing going, so it's definitely worth checking out. So if you're a Murnau completist, definitely add that. Some good old melodrama here in Desert Fury. Desert Fury is a really interesting film, and this has a commentary on it with film historian Imogen Sarah Smith that gets into all of this. This was written by Robert Rossen, who, of course, went on to be a much bigger director in 1947. Lewis Allen directed it, good programmer then. This was just a Paramount Western at the time, but it's kind of a... It's a Western and it's a noir. And
people forget that noir is not a genre in itself, but it can be applied to any genre.
That's correct.
Which is why it shows up in that movie right there.
That's correct. So, and it's a bit of a gangster film. It's got all of those elements in it, and it also has all kinds of really interesting sexual subtext, especially homoerotic subtext and stuff that wasn't immediately evident to audiences of the day, but it was definitely in the book. The book, if you've read it, by Ramona Stewart, is apparently a really quite a scandalous thing. But everybody who's in this, Mary Astor and Burt Lancaster, they're all just playing it straight. But this is quite a kind of a legendary and scandalous movie. Also scandalous, but not quite so legendary, is Randall Kleiser's Summer Lovers.
Yeah.
Randall Kleiser did The Blue Lagoon, and then did Summer Lovers, which basically consists of taking Peter Gallagher, Daryl Hannah, and a lovely actress who went on to do nothing, Valerie Kennison, and let's send them to Greece and have them frolic around half naked and just have a good old time. And anyone looking for some titillation in 1982 was likely to get it.
Yep.
And that was it. That's all there is to this thing. But Kleiser does a commentary, and there's a trailer and a featurette, and it is, it's more an artifact, but it's of its time. The Rover, Terrence Young's remarkable The Rover. What a great movie this is. What a fantastic cast, too. Anthony Quinn, Rita Hayworth, Rosanna Schiaffino, and a really great commentary here with Lee Gambon and Eloise Ross, two fantastic film historians who take you on an amazing journey of this very, very underrated movie from 1967. This is very interesting for me because it all kind of takes place in the right after the French Revolution in the port of Toulon, where I actually lived in the mid 1980s, and I know Toulon very, very well. So it's a very interesting thing. Anthony Quinn plays kind of a rogue guy who shows up with a very particular message at this time. Right now, the French Revolution is cutting people's heads off, and there's a let's just say he's a rogue and he's a scoundrel, and I don't want to quite compare this to the Scarlet Pimpernel, even though it deals in some of the same stuff. But it has Scarlet Pimpernel-y aspects to it, but it's darker and more brooding, and it has more twists and turns to it, oddly enough, which are quite interesting. And it also dovetails with history in a very interesting way. Just that whole world of post-revolutionary France is really quite chaotic and very, very interesting. And the thing that is most compelling about this is the Ennio Morricone music, which is beyond beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really, really good film, The Rover. Worth checking out. A Bill of Divorcement with Maureen O'Hara and Adolphe Menjou. This was a little bit of a thing in 1940. Dealt with a lot of things that were kind of scandalous at the time. People who were in, mental institutions and divorce and family stuff that is, that's a little bit, that we don't even blink at now. But it was kind of a thing that you don't want to talk about publicly at the time, so they brought it front and center in 1940. The most significant thing about this is that it was directed by John Farrow, father of Mia, who of course had many of his own scandals. So it's again an artifact of the time, worth checking out. The first electric western is how they dubbed Zachariah when that was released in 1971. Very much a psychedelic western of sorts. They did a beautiful job doing a new 4K scan of this from the original negative, and it looks beautiful. It's absolutely fantastic. It's as good as this film's ever looked. I've seen this over the years at some revival theaters, and it always looks just dead. It's like drained of its color and everything else. Their restoration and new scan of this is just perfect. There's an interview with Josh Rubinstein, who's still around, and from the movie, the actor, and then audio commentary with film historians Howard Berger and Nathaniel Thompson. All very nicely done. And then the last few here are all very, very touching. Walter Matthau in Kotch, which was directed by his buddy Jack Lemmon. Yeah, such a sweet movie. One of the few that they worked together on, either on screen, off screen, whatever it was, that dealt with aging in a really, really tender way. And it's just about an aging guy and trying to hold his family together. And it's just a sweet movie and one of Matthau's best performances. Charly, Charly, the film that won Cliff Robertson an award for Best Actor, based on Flowers for Algernon. This is in 1968, and of course is I think everybody's read that short story in school. Yeah, I mean it's standard in all American high schools, still has been for decades. About a mentally handicapped man who, through the miracle of science, is able to restore his cognitive faculties and experience what it's like to not be impaired, only to then discover that it's short-lived and he will once again be impaired. And
to fall in love
and fall in love in the meanwhile. And it's so beautifully done. But the reason that this works is not because of Ralph Nelson's participation. It's not even Sterling Silliphant's screenplay. The reason this works is because Cliff Robertson is amazing.
Yeah.
And Claire Bloom is wonderful, but Cliff Robertson is amazing.
Yeah, young,
Absolutely
very,
amazing.
very young Cliff Robertson, actually.
Very young. Diamonds for Breakfast. You know what? This is such a fantastic artifact of the time. Diamonds for Breakfast is one of the great quintessential 1960s movies. And it's because it's got Rita Tushingham, who sort of represents everything about the Haight-Ashbury groovy 60s in England that I've always loved. I mean, she is straight out of an Austin Powers movie.
Yeah.
With the thigh-high boots and the dresses and the whole thing. Man, I just love Rita Tushingham. And who else? Who better to put her opposite than Marcella Mastroianni at this point in time? Fantastic. And then, you know what? It's all about a heist. Stealing the imperial jewels of Russia. I couldn't love it anymore. This is a great movie. This is so much fun. Diamonds for Breakfast. You got to check it out. It's absolutely fantastic.
I even love the title.
Oh, it's such a fun movie. It really is. It's such a fun artifact of its time. And then lastly, The Group. What a fascinating movie this is. Also from the funky 60s, 1966. And this, believe it or not, was directed by Sidney Lumet.
Well, yeah,
Sidney Lumet.
Okay.
It's a totally uncharacteristic Sidney Lumet movie, but it is. It's kind of a, it's a battle of the sexes movie, is what it is, and it puts together quite an amazing cast to kind of wrangle all of the stuff that they want to talk about here. It's a huge ensemble thing. And it breaks it all down between the women and the men in this giant battle of the sexes thing. And what an amazing cast. Among the women, they've got Candice Bergen and Shirley Knight, Jessica Walter. It's really, really fantastic. And then the men, holy cow. Larry Hagman, who had been in Failsafe for Sidney Lumet and was so good in that. Hal Holbrook, Richard Mulligan. I mean, it's a wonderful movie and a wonderful cast and totally like unusual Sidney Lumet.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep. Not well remembered that one, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's good.
I had one more little one over here. I want to knock it out real quick to just take care of it. Return of the Vampire with Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi not playing Dracula in this movie. But nevertheless, going to end up playing the vampire. Neat movie because it starts in 1918. This family is actually being, terrorized by this vampire. But they drive a railroad stake through his heart. You'd think the movie would be over. But he is, of course, the undead. Fast forward to around World War II. The Germans are bombing, and a bomb shakes loose that railroad spike, and now we got the vampire back. That's so clever. And the other clever thing they do in this movie is they make his sidekick a werewolf.
Nice.
Now you got your vampire and your werewolf in the same
Before the
movie.
Twilight Saga.
Yeah, that's just what I'm telling you, man. It's really, really great. It's a neat movie. Bela Lugosi, doing the vampire thing the way he always did it. Pretty neat. Directed by Lou Landers. Lou Landers is one of those guys who directed probably close to 300, easily 200 or 300 movies, or shorts or something like that. One of those super duper ridiculously prolific guys whose career crossed over just about everything that you could think of. A real sort of William Bodine or Sam Neufeld kind of guy. But this is neat. Check it out if you get a chance. The Return of the Vampire, Bela Lugosi. Special features include a commentary with film historian Lee Gabon. It's really neat. Check it out.
And we're going to close out on some Warner Archive titles. The first one is Men Must Fight, which is the only one that's on DVD. That's DVD-R, manufacture on demand in the case of all of these. But Men Must Fight will be of interest to just about anybody who wants to kind of dive into the this early. I don't know if this is pre-code. This is like right in there. This may be right at the end of the pre-code era, but it's certainly, there's nothing necessarily objectionable about it. But it's a really interesting story because it's pre-World War II, of course. And there's something very prescient about it because this all takes place, it's sort of around World War I. And given what's going on in the early 30s, I think everybody realizes that another world war is definitely a possibility and very much in the offing. And with that history in mind, this will have some resonance. So even though this is not a political thing, it's sort of, that's the subtext to all of this. And the political subtext here is quite compelling. So it all takes place in the early part of the First World War, and how all of these political machinations impact these characters and their families, and in a way, it's sort of looking down the line and saying, "Is this going to happen again to us?" And it's kind of an ominous thing. On Blu-ray, all the rest of these are MOD Blu-rays. This is one I never expected to come out from Warner Archive, but I think it's interesting that it did, because it's kind of timely again. Judgment Night. Do you remember Judgment Night?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Stephen Hopkins, who would go on to do The Mummy.
And I rather enjoyed that film. It was issues around it at the time.
Well, the issues is this. It's four guys. Jeremy Piven is the only one that didn't make the poster at the time, and he's probably more successful now. He's a more known name than any of the rest of these at this point in time, because Stephen Dorff and Emilio Estevez and Cuba Gooding Jr. have all kind of
went up and come down, and
Piven went on to have a huge career on television, obviously,
Encore
with
and Mr.
The
Suffrage.
Yeah. So in any case, they're four guys. They're in Chicago, and they're just driving around, and they're in the bad part of town, and they witness a murder, and next thing you know, they're up against Timothy Leary, who's the guy, the murderer, and he's not. What do I do with you now? Do I have to kill you? And it's a little bit of an exploitation film, but it's dealing with issues that suddenly seem a lot more timely than they did then. Then we've also got the prize. The prize being the Nobel Prize, starring Paul Newman, and this is kind of a weird attempt to make a James Bond movie starring Paul Newman centered around the Nobel Prize. It's a little bit of an oddity, but it's kind of fun at the same time, based on a very silly novel by Irving Wallace, and it's directed extremely well by Mark Robson, who was one of those guys in the 60s that did, really great widescreen, muscular movies, and has a very solid screenplay by Ernst Lehman, who of course would go on to do The Sound of Music. Check it out just for Paul Newman, because Paul Newman's great. I don't know the story works quite that well, but Paul Newman he's just so unbelievable. That face, man. Like a face chiseled by Michelangelo. You go to museums and you look at those statues and you just think they look like Paul Newman. Or you wish you looked like Paul Newman.
Young Paul Newman was a ridiculously beautiful thing to look at. It's funny because most people, when they talk about, if just about handsome men, a lot of for contemporaries, they go to Robert Redford,
right?
Who's a handsome man. I'm not crazy. I know Robert was handsome. I'm not saying Robert wasn't handsome. No, but if you look closely, Paul Newman was way more beautiful. Oh, yeah. Yet he still had this manly thing about him. Hud. That guy, he could pretty man, but you felt like he'd punch you in your fucking face.
That's true.
It's that thing, you know what I mean?
Then we also have the giant Behemoth. Oh my word! When they were making all these crazy monster movies, this was kind of a follow-up for Eugene Lurie to his film The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which of course are all sort of stop motion Harryhausen knockoffs, and this is silly. I mean, it's the only difference here from any of that is that this thing is attacking London and it's not Godzilla attacking Tokyo. Swap the giant Behemoth in for Godzilla, swap London in for Tokyo. That's what this movie is. And it's fine. It's much more interesting because of the commentary, where they got Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett, legendary special effects guys, to sort of talk about why this is part and parcel of the history of our special effects today, and that's very interesting. So the commentary is the thing here, not so much the movie. The last two we will talk about this week, a couple of old Tarzan movies, and man, I used to be such a Tarzan fan when I was a kid. I read the books, and then I wanted to get into the movies, and then I realized the movies had nothing to do with the books. Who is this Weissmuller guy with the loincloth? That's not like the books. That's not what I was just reading about. He was a swimmer. Okay, I get it. And, then there was Buster Crabbe.
As a kid, I had no idea that guy lived in Tarzan. That Tarzana?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. In my mind, he was just some guy who lived in, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was the thing. Anyway, so if these are both very silly. They are basically gladiator movies, except with Tarzan instead of a gladiator. But they are part and parcel of a fascinating legacy of Tarzan movies. And these are noteworthy because of their exotic backgrounds. Tarzan's 3 Challenges was actually shot in Thailand. Now, keep in mind, Tarzan is in Africa. There's nothing about Thailand that even remotely resembles Africa. And they don't even try. They just don't even try at all. So it's kind of funny, and it's a lot, and it's very, very silly. But this is Tarzan, played by Jock Mahoney.
Jock, yeah.
Who's sort of one of the less objectionable Tarzans. He's sort of Ron Ely-ish.
Yeah.
Woody Strode shows up in here to kind of give it a little bit of legitimacy, and it's perfectly fine.
It's trying to fix some of the problematic notions in the 30s and those wise Miller Tarzans.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what it's trying to do, and good on them for that.
And good on them for that, for sure. And then Mahoney also plays in Tarzan Goes to India, which, just to point out again, is also not Africa. Also does not look like Africa. Makes no sense that the Tarzan would ever be anywhere near India.
But he gets to fight a tiger because otherwise that would be insane.
Anyway, as long as you put all of that away, it's still kind of fun. And of course, this was directed by John Gillerman, who previously had done a Tarzan film with him, and John Gillerman, who would go on to do things like The Towering Inferno and King Kong
with Jessica Lange, young Jessica Lange.
So John Gillerman was sort of one of those early era action directors before we had action directors. Anyway, look, they're silly, but they are Tarzan movies. Take them with a grain of salt. They can still be enjoyable, even though Thailand and India are not even remotely Africa. And with that, next week we'll be back, and we will be talking about the Oscars.
What actually happened.
And what actually happened. We'll see you next week.